So much, Mr. Moritz. I see that compassion in the way that you deliver your messages about the resilience, about sustainability and agility of the business world in working with other communities of the society. Now, the three speakers are the brilliant minds. Leave me with very little room to ask questions already. But let me do a little bit. I learned from Lao Tzu, one of the ancient philosophers in history. So I would love to ask questions from two ends of the same question. First of all, short-term versus long-term. Every one of us here face that question. You talk about investment. Wonderful. But where's the money? Short-term. What about the future? How do we know that? We love the directions you three gentlemen pointed to all of us in the Asia Pacific, but we cannot guarantee the certainty of the future you described. So what about short-term, long-term? Let's go with this way, yeah? Is it okay this time? Professor Schwab, briefly. Short-term, long-term.
Certainly, we have to think long-term, and as I mentioned, we have to think in strategic terms. This does not exclude to be very preoccupied with certain short-term issues. I'm thinking particularly, and here, by the way, this region has a great advantage with a higher macroeconomic stability in general compared to some of the European countries, because fiscal policies are now very difficult to be adopted in order to invest into the future. As you rightly said, we have squeezed out the national budget and the capabilities of government facilitating investments into the future. So business has to come in, whatever you can, and I would invest now as far as I can, and particularly invest into being at the top of the digital and green economy, because invest now as far as I can, and particularly invest into being at the top of the digital and green economy, because this will pay the dividends in the future, being at the forefront of the digital and green economy.
What about for a president of a country in the Asia Pacific? Short-term, long-term?
Well, I will be specific to the Philippine experience. Short-term issues are very simple. It is actually, at this point, it is survival for many of our people, simply because prices of fuel, prices of food has risen up to such an extent that they simply cannot afford to survive without assistance from the government. And hence, we are still presently in the Philippines providing just direct cash transfer payments. This is not something that we prefer to do. I don't think that anyone is particularly enamored with direct cash transfer payments, but it is the only way that we can mitigate the situation that our people have. So that is something that we are hoping with the creation of jobs and with the growth of the economy to slowly begin to dial down. And it is with the pandemic beginning to ease, at least in our case, then there's a great deal of hope that that emergency situation will slowly resolve itself into some kind of normalcy. In the long term, there really are, I agree with Mr. Moritz, the changes that need to be made are structural. They have to be done structurally because this is a different world, this is a different economy. And as we were discussing in the green room, he says, we're not playing catch up. And I said, even if you were, what are we trying to catch up to, 2019? I don't think that that's the plan. And so we have to be, we cannot be too married to the ideas that we were holding as truths before, and we have to be willing to make big changes, but with recognition that from what is actually happening around the world. But when we make these structural changes, I like to pick up on the point that Dr. Schwab made, is innovation. We must allow still innovation we must still continue to encourage innovation and to recognize innovations that can actually help and immediately put them into play, or put that, if it's a product, to market, or if it's a system, to implement that system. So the agility that Mr. Moritz is saying, I think, is the key to the future in the long term for not only the ASEAN, Asia-Pacific region, Indo-Pacific region, but for the whole world.
Thank you, Mr. President.